Punctuation is extremely important to learn for functioning in society as both a reader and a writer. Without punctuation, making meaning from written text would be extremely difficult, and authors' ideas may be incorrectly expressed to readers. In this presentation, we will look at what needs to be taught and how it can be taught in classrooms today. Punctuation is known as the marks used in text to separate elements and clarify meaning. Knowledge of punctuation encompasses many facets which are taught to students throughout their schooling career. The purpose of punctuation in sentences is a theme that is taught all through Year 1 to Year 7. Students learn how punctuation can be used for boundary markers, status markers, and marking relationships. The aspects of punctuation which are used for boundary markers are capital letters, full stops, commas, colons, semicolons, question marks, and exclamation marks. Aspects used for status markers are quotation marks, question marks, and exclamation marks. Relationship markers include apostrophes. Students are first introduced to the use of punctuation for boundaries through the beginnings and endings of sentences. They are taught how sentences must begin with capital letters and end with a mark, either a full stop, exclamation mark, or a question mark. After beginning and ending sentence punctuation has been taught, the focus can be placed on punctuation within sentences. Punctuation within sentences can be used to separate ideas, show possessive ownership, or for the exclusion of letters in the case of the apostrophe. Punctuation within sentences is explored more in depth as students progress through primary school. Students may also become exposed to the rules of using other context-specific punctuation, such as brackets, dashes, hyphens, and signposts in upper primary when dealing with a wider range of texts. After students have been introduced to the rules and background knowledge behind punctuation, they will begin to shape an understanding of how punctuation usage can alter meanings in written texts. An example of where punctuation has changed the meaning in the same sentence is, "Let's eat, Grandma," and "Let's eat, Grandma." The example given shows exactly how important punctuation is. The emphasis and context of this sentence has completely changed through punctuation choice. The comma in the sentence has placed emphasis on the start of the sentence and has shown how the suggestion has been directed at the subject of the sentence, in this case, the grandma. The quotation marks show that it is in fact speech and not statement, which completely alters the meaning of this sentence. As students progress to middle and upper primary, they become exposed to a variety of different text types. Differentiating between the punctuation used in these text types is an important critical understanding students should learn. They will learn how the author has positioned them to respond and feel through punctuation. Two examples of this are the use of rhetorical questions and the use of exclamation marks. Rhetorical questions are usually used in non-fiction texts to make readers ponder a question or point of view. These are frequently used in articles and newspapers. An example of a thought-provoking rhetorical question: if life is so short, why do we do so many things we don't like and like so many things we don't do? Exclamation marks are used for an increase of emphasis or expression, often used in fiction text for expression of emotions such as shock, excitement, or fear. After grasping these understandings, students will use the skills in their own writing, ensuring the meaning they wanted to convey is expressed through their punctuation choice. Teaching punctuation rules in practice. In the early years, children are introduced to different aspects of punctuation through modelled reading and shared readings. Classrooms are endowed with many written resources available for students to cultivate language acquisition and knowledge of punctuation. Learning punctuation is at first always through demonstration and appropriate modelling by the teacher, before students can begin to apply the rules in their own writing and speaking. This approach is based on Vygotskian principles of scaffolding, with teacher guidance to eventually have students using punctuation autonomously. It is important when teaching punctuation in the early years to cover content using mini-lessons, otherwise it can all become a bit too overwhelming for students who are not developmentally ready to learn all aspects at once. In the same way that we teach punctuation rules, it is important to begin with a more teacher-focused activities to facilitate basic understanding. A fantastic way to facilitate this understanding is to comment on your own writing and punctuation choices. Asking students questions such as, "Why have I used this comma here? If I didn't use this comma, would this sentence be too long and difficult to read?" can instigate meaningful conversations which students begin to understand exactly why authors have used punctuation for purpose. It is important to encourage students to apply this knowledge and understanding into their own writing. In the editing stage of the writing process, students can adapt and change their own punctuation usage to clarify what meaning they wanted their text to convey. Group work in the editing stage is a great way to start conversations about the punctuation choices students have chosen to make. Another member of the group can read the text the student has written and ask them to explain why they have used the punctuation. Students can alter their work after these discussions to make sure their meaning has been conveyed. Any accidental errors or missed punctuation can also be added into the text in the proofreading stage. There are not many alternative perspectives as to what punctuation should be taught, but rather how punctuation should be taught in classrooms. Alternative perspectives which have also been raised. Should students be taught punctuation in isolation, or do you believe that it should be integrated into all learning whenever the opportunity arises? Do you teach punctuation as rules that society imposes on writers, or do you see it as a code for accessing or conveying meaning? Your own personal opinion on how important punctuation is strongly defines your practice in teaching it. If you believe it is imposed rules, you are likely not to give it the teaching attention it deserves. A lot of students in the past, myself included, have been taught punctuation through drills and testing. The biggest limitation of this approach for me was that I didn't understand how to apply punctuation into my own writing, and as we learnt more aspects, I got very left behind. I was able to succeed in testing, but this was not an accurate measure of how much I actually understood. The Australian curriculum provides us with an accurate description of what punctuation should be taught when, according to when students will be developmentally ready to learn. The beginning stage, Year 1 and Year 2. As previously discussed, students learn about punctuation at the ends and beginnings of sentences first. The Australian curriculum places importance on students being able to recognise the different aspects of punctuation. They also begin to show this knowledge in their writing. The fluent stage, end of Year 2 onwards. Focus changes dramatically towards students using punctuation in their own writing for creating texts. Students use punctuation in their own editing also. By the end of Year 7, the curriculum aims to have students use punctuation to support meaning in complex sentences with prepositional phrases and embedded clauses.
Often, when focusing on the writing, reading, and spelling components of teaching, educators can forget the role handwriting plays within literacy. Handwriting is a means of producing writing using a pen and a pencil with one's hand. It is considered to be a style of writing in a unique way for any individual to express their capacity to form letters or words. It is important to implement and educate students about handwriting for several reasons, the first of which being that it has a pervasive effect on students' performance in spelling and reading. Students should learn the link between the formation of letters, the way they are constructed, and the phonetic sounds which correspond to them. Students who write the letter M on a page will be learning to understand that, corresponding to the way the letter is written, the sound is linked to it. Supported by Vygotsky's theory in regards to the zone of proximal development, it is crucial that in the beginning years, teachers assist students with their handwriting and gradually allow them to develop their personal style and fluency for a variety of audiences. Secondly, handwriting is a means of communication. Although penmanship is not as important today as it was many years ago, students should know how to use our hands to write and have a willingness to accept responsibility of their own material. Otherwise, handwriting is quickly substituted with touch typing, which, although is highly relevant, only proves to be a quicker means of generating the same outcomes with the least amount of effort. Thirdly, handwriting can improve a person's ability to correct mistakes and develop their personal capacity to build on their own learning and skills and have a positive attitude towards themselves as individuals. As early as kindergarten, children are already exposed to handwriting. By the end of their primary years, learners will become aware that print conveys a message. Handwriting is one of a number of skills used in the writing process. Various styles can be produced using similar techniques. Pen lifts have a specific function. Letters have the components of bodies, heads, and tails, and purpose and audience influence the style of writing used. As well as this, there are also 3 components of handwriting. These are letter formation, size, and spacing. Letter formation focuses on the ability of students to recognize letters in a text on computer, keyboards, and in the environment. Size refers to the shapes of the letters and the heads, bodies, and tails in them. Spacing is demonstrated as breaks between words in order for legibility and overall appearance to be clear. Educators understand that children can only focus on one of three of these aspects at a time, for there can be too many things to look at. Enforced by Piaget's developmental theory, students are only able to achieve learning capabilities at certain stages in their life. Some skills of handwriting include proper hand-eye coordination, fine motor control over holding a pen or pencil, use of consistent letter shapes, size, slope, and spacing as well as overall alignment, appropriate use of pen lifts, a relaxed and smooth handwriting style, legibility even at an increased speed, and personal strategies developed to assess their own style. Developing arguments for and against. Although handwriting is an important area, there are some arguments against its relevance to teaching it in the 21st century. Living in a digitally diverse world where computers and the internet rule children's lives in the everyday, handwriting has become a dying art which brings to question why it should be taught. It is outdated, and in terms of how often cursive is used, it is generally only ever needed when people are required to show an authentic signature on documentation. Some say the curriculum is outdated and extensive penmanship is irrelevant to students now, and when handwriting can be as simple as choosing a font on a page, why spend countless hours teaching it to students who may never use it later in life? In contrast to these arguments, handwriting is still relevant for several reasons. By using the conventions of the written language, a writer records ideas and messages which can be read by others. This is aided by students' own knowledge and experiences and the need to compose them through handwriting. By doing this, they develop an understanding about the knowledge, skills, and abilities involved in producing handwritten work in order to appreciate it. Children plan, compose, revise, and publish to express their feelings. Recognizing these areas as a teacher will help rectify how important handwriting is to implement in schools. It will also assure parents of its relevance to their child's lives. What does handwriting look like in a classroom? Visually, when handwriting is used, children are engaged and, depending on the year group, look as though they can demonstrate the skills mentioned above and value the relevance handwriting holds to their own lives. Explicit teaching refers to the application and demonstration by the teacher of how, when, and why certain strategies need to be used. Teachers are also required to provide demonstration, whole class modeling, shared reading, and small group and individual writing. Guided practice and application to real-life situations also allow for opportunities where students can revisit handwriting tasks. Aesthetically, educators need to consider these things when assessing students. Can it be read easily and quickly? Is it attractive and pleasing to view? Is there a balance between the head and tail? And has the writing been formed with appropriate amount of pressure? In regards to the strategies of development and writing process, students begin handwriting through the emergent or beginning stages of writing. This generally encompasses year 1 to 2 and involves palmar or incomplete tripod ways of gripping a pencil. Students at this point are able to acquire concepts about the alphabet, develop basic handwriting skills, use phonics skills, and spell phonetically. Students are also able to produce handwriting from guided reading, word balls, and mini lessons conducted by the teacher. By year 1, students should be able to have a correct posture and pencil grip, learn how letters are constructed in terms of where it starts and ends, and be able to write consistently with regard to size and legibility. Students past this point then move on to becoming fluent in their handwriting and by being able to recognize and successfully produce their own style of writing. Students at this stage are between years 2 to 4, depending on their capabilities. Children at this point participate in writing groups and learn to appreciate and write stories, reports, and other text. In years 3 and 4, students must be able to practice how to join letters, to construct a fluent handwriting style, and use clearly formed, joined letters and increase their fluency and speed. In conclusion, both handwriting and punctuation are integral to learn to become literate and fully functioning in society.